There's something circling Earth. Not a known satellite, not a leftover rocket, but an object that defies easy explanation. It's been observed in orbit, tracked by military radar, photographed from space, and even reported by astronauts. What's strange is this object seems to have been up there since before the space age began. Some call it the Black Knight satellite, not because we know what it is, but because we don't. Its origin is unknown, its purpose unclear, its story a patchwork of unexplained events that span over a century. This isn't science fiction. These reports, ranging from Nikola Tesla's wireless experiments in 1899 to radio signal anomalies in the 1920s, to radar detections in 1954, and a NASA photograph in 1998, are all documented, debated, and still unresolved. So what is it? A forgotten artifact of Cold War surveillance, a misunderstood piece of space debris, or, as some believe, a 13,000-year-old alien probe, silently orbiting Earth. Watching us, we'll explore all of these possibilities, carefully, clearly, with evidence and context, because the mystery of the Black Knight satellite isn't about believing blindly, it's about asking questions. Welcome to Before the Light, where we dive into the strange and the unknown, always grounded in curiosity. Let's begin. Our story doesn't begin in the space age. It begins at the turn of the 20th century, before rockets, before satellites, and even before radio was widespread. In 1899, inventor Nikola Tesla was conducting experiments with wireless energy at his remote lab in Colorado Springs. One night, while monitoring electromagnetic signals from his coil towers, he detected something unusual, a pattern, a rhythmic, repeating signal. Tesla, never one to think small, speculated that it might be a message from intelligent life beyond Earth. Today, we understand that space is full of electromagnetic noise, signals from stars, planets, even natural radio bursts. But Tesla's equipment was among the most sensitive of its time, and what he heard was unlike any natural interference he knew. At the time, the scientific community dismissed the idea, but that strange signal was only the beginning. Fast forward to the 1920s. As amateur radio, also known as ham radio, gained popularity, operators around the world began reporting a phenomenon that puzzled even professional physicists. When they transmitted a signal, sometimes it bounced back, but not immediately. Instead of an instant echo, the same message would return after several seconds, a delay far too long to be caused by a typical atmospheric reflection. These became known as long-delayed echoes, or LDEs. One of the first to study them seriously was Jørgen Hals, a physicist in Oslo, Norway. In 1928, he documented several cases of these delayed signals and concluded that they couldn't be explained by any known natural process. At the time, there were no artificial satellites in orbit, no known objects in space to reflect those signals. So, what was causing them? Some theorists proposed that the echoes were bouncing off the moon, or being affected by unusual atmospheric conditions. But none of these explanations fit all the data. Others, more speculative, wondered if an object in orbit could be catching the signals and sending them back. Not necessarily alien, but perhaps artificial, something already circling Earth, decades before humanity had the means to reach orbit. To this day, no conclusive answer has been found. But for some, this was the first whisper from what would later be called the Black Knight. By the early 1950s, the world was on the edge of a technological revolution. The Cold War was intensifying, radar systems were improving, and the concept of launching machines into space was moving from science fiction to military planning. But then came something no one could explain. In May 1954, several American newspapers, including the San Francisco Examiner, ran a striking headline: 2 unknown satellites detected orbiting Earth. This was 3 years before the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1, the first officially recognized human-made satellite. According to these reports, the U.S. Air Force had picked up 2 unidentified objects in orbit using their radar systems. One of the loudest voices behind the claim was Donald Keyhoe, a former Marine Corps pilot turned public UFO researcher. He asserted that these objects were neither American nor Soviet, and that they represented something unknown. At the time, military radar was considered extremely reliable, built for early missile warning and tracking high-altitude aircraft. This wasn't a backyard antenna picking up noise. These were high-power government systems. But that wasn't the only oddity. By the late 1950s, multiple observatories began tracking an object in what's known as a polar orbit, meaning it circled Earth from north to south. Rather than the more common east-west trajectory, polar orbits are ideal for spying because they allow a satellite to see every part of the planet as Earth rotates beneath it. The catch? At the time, no country had the technology to place an object in polar orbit. Neither the US nor the USSR had that launch capability. Yet this object was already up there, moving steadily on a path no one could explain. It didn't match any known launch. It wasn't debris from a rocket or space mission, and it wasn't behaving like natural space junk. As the mystery grew, so did the legend. People began calling it the Black Knight satellite, a name as ominous as the unknown it represented. It had no flag, no launch record, and no explanation. Just a presence, a shadow, quietly circling Earth where no satellite was supposed to be. By the late 1990s, space exploration had become routine. The Cold War was over, and cooperation between nations had begun shaping a new frontier. The International Space Station. In December 1998, Space Shuttle Endeavour launched on mission STS-88, the very first U.S. mission to assemble modules for the ISS. As astronauts worked outside the shuttle, connecting parts and testing systems, they also took photographs, dozens of them. But one photo, one image, sparked something no one expected. It showed a dark, angular object drifting high above Earth's horizon. The shape was bizarre, not like a loose tool or crumpled foil. Its edges were sharp, its body asymmetrical, almost sculptural. Within days, the image began circulating online. Some called it a piece of space junk. Others weren't so sure. To those familiar with the Black Knight legend, it felt like a revelation. There it is, finally captured on camera. NASA responded quickly. Their explanation was straightforward. The object was a thermal blanket, a piece of insulating material that had accidentally come loose during an EVA spacewalk. And in fact, NASA had documented a blanket being lost during the STS-88 mission. It's not unusual. Tools and materials have drifted away during spacewalks before, but skeptics pointed out some problems. First, actual thermal blankets tend to flutter and fold. They look soft, irregular, but the object in the photo seemed rigid and structured. Second, this blanket didn't simply float off and disappear. According to several amateur and independent tracking sources, it remained in stable orbit for days. And third, the timing. The object appeared exactly where a wave of sightings and rumors had already placed the Black Knight, in low Earth orbit, behaving unlike anything officially acknowledged. So what are we looking at in that photo? NASA says it's debris. Others see design, the contours of something constructed, not accidental. It's never been officially identified beyond that one explanation. And the object itself, it was never recovered. But for believers, this photo wasn't just a curious moment. It was the clearest glimpse yet of something that had haunted our skies for decades. An object seen not through radar or stories, but captured on film, real, visible, and still unexplained. The year is 1963. NASA's Mercury program, the United States' first crewed spaceflight initiative, is nearing its end. On May 15th, astronaut Gordon Cooper is launched aboard Mercury Atlas 9, the final mission in the program. His task? To orbit Earth for over 34 hours, gathering data and testing endurance systems. Everything proceeds as planned until something unusual is reported near the end of his mission. According to multiple later sources, Cooper radioed down to say he saw a glowing green object outside his capsule, drifting in space, visible through the porthole of Faith 7. But it wasn't just visual. At the Muchea tracking station in Western Australia, radar technicians reportedly confirmed that an object was detected, moving in the same orbital path as Cooper's spacecraft. Two observations. one in space, one on Earth, a match. But when NASA released the official transcripts and mission logs, there was no mention of the sighting. Even more strangely, Gordon Cooper himself later denied that he had seen anything unusual. So what changed? Some speculate that NASA pressured Cooper to retract the claim, fearing public panic or damage to the credibility of the program. Others suggest it was a misunderstanding, perhaps visual distortion, or atmospheric phenomenon. But here's what complicates the story. Cooper was not a skeptic. In the years that followed, he became a vocal advocate for serious UFO investigation. He testified before the United Nations in 1985, urging global cooperation in studying unexplained aerial phenomena. He even claimed to have witnessed disc-shaped craft during his time in the Air Force, well before his Mercury mission, which leads to the question, if he truly saw something during Faith 7, why deny it later? Was it confusion, reputation management, or something he was asked, perhaps even told, not to discuss? Some UFO researchers point to this moment as the closest encounter a human has had with the Black Knight satellite, an up-close sighting corroborated by radar, then quietly removed from the record. Skeptics remain unconvinced. No hard evidence has surfaced, and Cooper's own public statements remained inconsistent. But still, the event lingers, half confirmed, half forgotten, and in the long, shadowy story of the Black Knight, it stands as one of the most tantalizing chapters. So what exactly is the Black Knight satellite? Let's look at the three main theories, ranging from the scientific to the speculative. Theory 1, an ancient alien probe. This is perhaps the most popular and controversial idea. Some believe the Black Knight is not human in origin at all, but rather a 13,000-year-old extraterrestrial monitoring device placed in orbit to observe Earth over millennia. This theory draws partly from the 1970s reinterpretation of Jürgen Hall's long-delayed echoes. A Scottish researcher named Duncan Lunan studied the signal patterns and claimed that, when plotted, they resembled a star map, one pointing directly to the Epsilon Bootis star system, roughly 200 light-years from Earth. Lunan even attempted to translate a supposed message from the signal, suggesting it read something like, "We are from Epsilon Bootis. We have been watching you." Even Lunan himself would later walk back these claims, clarifying that his interpretation was speculative, not a verified decoding. Still, the idea stuck, and it remains one of the central myths around the Black Knight, that we didn't find it. It found us long ago. Theory 2, Cold War spy tech. A more grounded theory argues the object is a secret military satellite, launched by the US or Soviet Union in the early days of space exploration. The evidence? Its reported polar orbit, which would have allowed it to scan the entire planet as Earth rotated beneath it. At the time, polar orbits were strategically valuable but technologically difficult. No nation officially had the capability to place objects in such an orbit until years after the Black Knight was allegedly observed. So if it really was in polar orbit in the 1950s before Sputnik, how did it get there? No nation has ever claimed ownership of the object, and there are no known launch records that match its reported trajectory or behavior, which raises a new possibility. If it was launched during the Cold War, it may have been so secret that even now, it remains unacknowledged. Theory 3, misidentification and space debris. NASA maintains a much simpler explanation. According to official accounts, the object photographed in 1998 was nothing more than a thermal blanket, a piece of insulating material that accidentally floated away during the STS-88 mission. Other sightings and radar detections, NASA attributes them to signal bounce, tracking errors, and overinterpretation. There's truth in this approach. Space is filled with debris, reflections are tricky, and human perception is far from perfect. But critics argue that this doesn't fully explain the long timeline, the consistency of reports across decades, or the object's continued orbital behavior after the STS-88 event. So which is it? An alien artifact, a Cold War relic, or simply a misunderstood object that's been exaggerated over time? The mystery endures not because we lack explanations, but because none of them explain everything. From Tesla's mysterious signals in 1899 to echoes bouncing back in the 1920s, to radar detections in 1954, and a photograph taken aboard Space Shuttle Endeavour in 1998. The Black Knight satellite is not a single event. It's a mosaic, a riddle built from fragments of history, science, and speculation. No single explanation ties it all together. Some pieces point to science, others to secrecy, and a few still defy all logic. Maybe it's just debris, misunderstood and mythologized over decades. Maybe it's a relic of Cold War espionage, lost to time and redacted files. Or maybe, just maybe, it's a remnant of something not of this earth, watching silently from above. But here's the real reason the Black Knight endures. Not because we can prove it's alien, not because it's a hoax, but because it reminds us of a simple, powerful truth. We don't know everything. It challenges us to look up, not for answers, but for better questions. It dares us to consider that the universe may still hold secrets, floating just above our heads. And maybe, just maybe, it's not waiting to be discovered. Maybe it's been watching us all along. What do you believe? Is the Black Knight a myth, a machine, a messenger? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this journey sparked something in you, a question, a memory, or just a sense of awe, we'd love for you to like, subscribe, and stay curious, because the truth may be out there, but the real magic, that begins before the light.